Specialization core 1 was Linux that you have been already studied in the previous semester. And now core 2 is this. The structure is L, lecture is 3, and there is no tutorial, and the practical part is 2, meaning that you will have a one lab of 2 hours every week, and there will be 3 lectures in a week, and total it has 4 credits. Okay. Now the course outcome is we will be studying about the vulnerabilities and how to exploit those vulnerabilities, and what are the countermeasures and defense mechanism that we can take on. Okay, so in this particular thing, so if you have any doubt, just unmute your mic and you can ask me, or you can post it in your chat boxes. Okay. So first one is that we will be studying extensively about system vulnerabilities and how can we exploit those vulnerabilities, and what are the countermeasures or defense mechanism that you can avoid those vulnerability in the first places. Okay. So this will be again studied with the lab, and the lab we will show you how the common vulnerability that will exist in the system, how can you exploit that, and what are the countermeasures for that. Similarly, you have to examine spyware and security issues and different types of attacks. That will also be a part of a lab. And again, the lab part is that you have to do programming for system and mobile security, that will also come under it. Okay. So mostly if you're seeing this course objectives, they are steadily based on the laboratory part. Okay. So you are studying system vulnerabilities, but we will be seeing the system vulnerabilities in real time, and we will try to exploit those vulnerabilities. Suppose that if you're seeing that some ports are already opened in Windows, some ports are not opened in Linux, that is why it's very secure. But many of the ports are already being opened in Windows. So you can certainly exploit those ports. You can give some kind of a command and you can enter into the system. So these are some things that I'll show you with the help of different tools. Okay, so mostly that there will be many tools that we'll be using in the lab. there there will not be any specific tool. Okay, so in particular lab we will be using 3 or 4 different type of tools that can happen. Okay, so because network security has different kinds of open source tools. Okay, so that you can use. Okay, so suppose I'm using for only scanning, what are the open ports there, you can use nmap. So it's inbuilt in Linux system, you can use nmap, or you can use packet tracer. Packet tracer is also to test your networks. You can use packet tracer for this as well. Again, you can use for the same purpose, that is you can also use wireshark. Okay, so all of these are open source tool. Okay, so packet tracer is more specifically to test your networks before deploying it, but nmap and wireshark is more likely that you will be scanning the networks, that will be scanning the packets that is coming out and into your network. Okay, so nmap and wireshark is like that. Okay, so there are again many tools that we will study in the lab. So mostly we will be covering the tools, and what are the things that you can relate. Some of you have extensive knowledge of these tools, but again there are new tools also that will also be given that will also be studied in the labs. Okay, so every experiment we are not limited to a single tool, but you have to know the functionality. Actually, you have to in real time, you have to know the functionality of different tools to do any kind of attack. Okay, so I will be doing experiments on my system, and we will try to get a virtual environment where we can try to exploit various kinds of systems real time. And if we that virtual environment will be available from either EC Council or from CompTIA. Okay, so that we will be discussing in the lab. Okay, now after that, what are the evaluation components? Okay, so this is the main thing. So midterm examination will be of 20 marks and term will be of 35. So these two are fixed. Continuous lab evaluation will be of 10 marks only, and then there will be a lab exam. Okay, so there will be no what you say best 3 out of 2 or out of 3. There is no best system. If there are 2 lab examination, there will be 2 lab examination, and there will be no best out of anything. Okay, so if there are two, your your marks will be averaged. Similarly, there will be quiz of 15 marks, and again, if there are two quizzes, there will be two quizzes, then there will be not averaging out of these quizzes. Okay, so another part is your assignment slash certification. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of a certification after 1 week. I'll give you I'll show you that which particular certification you have to do. Okay, so those are very easy certifications. You can do it in a day, but there will be 2 or 3 certifications, so you can I will be giving you ample amount of time that you can easily do those certifications. Okay, so again, our uh, Bennett University has signed an MOU with Fortinet. So the courses of Fortinet are free. So I will be giving you only those courses to complete, which are either be completed in a less amount of time. Okay. So don't worry about the certification part. These are free numbers. Okay. So certification part is free number. I will be giving you a little bit time like 3 months or 4 months to complete the certification. After that, you have to only upload your certificate and you will get 10 marks. Okay, either if there is any kind of a paid certification, so I'll give you some kind of assignment. If anybody is not able to do certification, so there will be assignment, and assignment will be a difficult one than the certification. Okay, so I'll recommend everyone to do a certification because it's also help in the coming placements and other things also. Okay, any doubt till here? Okay, so we are only okay. Now, moving on forward, these are the books that I will be referring to. So the first book is R. Bragg and Network Security. It's a complete reference. And then this is the mostly referred book that I will be following. That is William Stalling System Security Essential. Okay, so one of the most popular books, and you can easily find it on the internet. I cannot post you a link of PDFs because you already know, because in a university you cannot pirate those books. Okay, so you just search for William Starling's Network Security Essential and you write PDF. After that, you can easily find any on internet. You can easily find the PDF of this book. Okay, so this is a Bible of network security. Most of the concept will be from this book. Okay, another reference book is Joseph Miga, and it is Guide to Computer Network Security. So this is simplest book you can find, but I'll refer this book. Okay, so this is one of the easiest book, and most of the concepts are from this book. Okay, so again, this book contains extensive amount of network security essentials, and you can also study those concepts that are not covered in the syllabus. So that is why I've said this is the main standard book that I will be following, and you should also be following. Okay, so these are some courses that I have given that you can also study if you are uh, this is the first course is Fundamental of Computer Network Security Specialization, and this is from Coursera, and another is EDX. So both of these courses are MOOC courses and they are free of cost. You can access any of these courses. I recommend this course because it take your it will start from the basic and it will go to very advanced level. Okay, okay, this course is very also very good, but this course is it also have different parts. So if you want to study further, it has again a further module that you can advance. So that is why the Fundamental of Network Security Specialization is a good course. Okay, now why you are studying network security? What are the main advantages of network security, and how will it help you to build a career in cyber security? Okay, so network security, you can say it because you have already studied Linux and shell programming, and you will have a little bit of a knowledge about Linux. Okay, so don't worry if you do not have any kind of a knowledge. I will show you how you can install Linux. I will also show you how can you install Linux subsystem on Windows. I can also show you how via VM, virtual machine, and then we will start our experiments on Linux. Okay, so you already have studied Linux, so I will be most of the time. If you have a different Windows for Linux, that is also fine. And if you have a virtual machine, that is also fine. Okay. So I'll also show you one other thing, but that does not work very efficiently, that you can also run Linux terminal on Windows. So that there is something called Linux subsystem for Windows. And then I will also show you how to activate it, but that will be only for specific purposes. Okay. So there is no, not The bash will not run all commands, but certainly some of the commands that you can run it. Okay, so most of the time we will be studying, we will be doing our experiments in our Linux terminal. And I also show you variants of Linux. Like if you're using nmap on Linux, you can also use it on Windows. Okay, so I'll also do it like that. If you are working in a Linux, so I'll also provide certain functionality in Windows also. Okay, sometimes you are using Windows, but I'll recommend you always use Linux because you will be in a network security environment. Okay, so most of the tools that are freely available are on Linux platform, but many of them are also on Windows platform that are also available. Okay, so you can see that network security is your first step to cyber security. Okay, so you can think of it like that. Okay, because you are already seeing that there is a tremendous growth of cyber security around. If you see from 2020 when the lockdown happened, the amount of security attacks increased by 100-fold. Okay, because everybody is sitting on home and everybody is surfing internets. Now the job opportunities also increase like for 50x or 20x like that. Okay, 20 to 50x the job opportunities in these fields have increased. Okay, so there are many jobs that are free, that are available, but there is no network security engineers for that particular job, and persons do not have a sufficient skill to do any kind of a network security job. Okay, so if you study the core subject, that is computer networks, and then you study network security. Okay, so we are studying it correspondingly. Now you will understand how networks work and how can you impose security on those networks. Okay, so that is why it is very important. If you are a part of cyber security specialization, you have to know computer networks by heart. Okay, so computer networks will make you understand that how actually your network works and how can you impose a security on those networks. Okay, so there are many weak spots that you can easily find, but only if you know how networks work, how router work, how your routing protocols actually work. Okay, so if you're able to get that, you can easily able to impose security. Okay, so keep that in mind uh, before going extensively into the network security part. You have to get a little bit of a knowledge about networks. Okay, so wherever it is necessary, I will tell you about the network part, so don't worry. You will also be studying in computer networks, but they it can happen that when I'm giving you some kind of experiment that has some link in computer networks. Okay, so don't worry, I will cover that part also, and I will cover the network security part. Okay, so first of all, it's an important part of cyber security. Network security, we already know, protects your data, client data. So client data is now a new term because now we have expanding businesses like Amazon, Google. There are many businesses that are mainly online because of the online boom, and everything is mainly online right now. Okay, so we have to protect the client data. So that is also a very big thing now, big word. Previously it was not used like that, but again this is a very big word because we have to provide end-to-end encryption. We also have to provide services to our client saying that we will not look into your data. So for that kind of thing, we need encryption and decryption. So we need end-to-end encryption. We need 128 standard bit encryption that you will study in your network security part. Okay, so only when you know how your RSA algorithm works, that is for encryption, how your Diffie-Hellman algorithm work, that is also a part of your encryption. Only then you can understand that how can you impose end-to-end encryption and other part. Okay, so protects your data is fine, but protect client data is where you generate the revenue. Okay, another thing is that network security also improve your network performance, and then you can also protect your system against your ransomware. So that was a very previously in 4 or 5 years back, that was a very uh, troublesome attack that you will find, ransomware, that where they lock your system and your data, and they will demand some money so that they can unlock it in terms of Bitcoin, so that that particular currency cannot be tracked. Okay, Another thing is network security is a lucrative field. Now there are more job opportunities in network security that you can never find. Okay, so it because the cyber security attacks has increased hundredfold. That is why this is a lucrative field right now, and it will be in the coming 5 to 6 years, because after that we will shift towards quantum computing, and quantum computing can break any encryption under 2 or 3 seconds. Again, the network security fields from that 5 years again will rise further. You will have to have a quantum encryption so that quantum computer cannot break that. So again, if you go into that field of network security, it is you will always, I think, in those times you will always get a job. Okay, so you have to have the basics strong. Okay, so if you're thinking about that, I will be getting a network security job in the starting, don't worry. Most of the time they will be asking you the basic concept of computer networks or network security. Okay, so they are not expecting anyone to be a very, what you say, expert in networks. They will be giving you a training, because every company has its different tools. Okay, so the basic tool, that commonly used tool, will be covered in this particular course, but there are many tools that are designed by particular companies. Okay, so like Cisco uses its own variant of Linux in their particular industry. So that particular variant of Linux is again very secure. Okay, so again, any company that is giving you a security job will give you also the training, but that training will only be relevant, or you can understand those training if you have the knowledge of your core subjects like computer networks and network security. Okay, so now I'll be giving you some of the introduction of network security before we starting, but I also want to give you a little bit of introduction about the networks. Okay, so how network works, how there are different networks, and how actually the communication between two, what do you say, system occurs. Okay, so just a little bit of an example, then I'll start with the common terms, that is vulnerability and threat, that you may already know about. Okay, so suppose that I am communicating with you. Okay, so I'm sitting on my system and I'm communicating with you. Okay, so on my system, if you're just wait a second. Okay, sorry for that. So my system is directly connected to the internet. Okay, so before telling you how it is connected to the internet, so have to understand that I will be connected to a network. Okay, so suppose I'm connected to Geo network or BSNL network, any kind of a network. Suppose this is Geo network. Okay, so now in this geo network there will be hundreds of devices, thousand or even millions of devices that will be connected. Okay, so mostly it will be thousands of devices, because every network will have a different antenna. Okay, so suppose in our area only 1,000 to 2,000 people are connected to geo network. Okay, so now on this particular computer, I have opened a browser. Suppose I have opened a browser. Okay, so browser, I'm surfing internet. This is your network. This is referred to as host. Okay, so I'm just giving you simple terms that you have to understand when I'm using, or what is network and what is host. Okay, so network will be any kind of a network that will be provided by network provider. It can be BSNL, Geo, Vodafone, Airtel, anyone. Okay, host can be any particular computer that is connected with the network, that is connected in a network. Okay, so this particular computer, there may be other computers also. Okay, there may be other systems or mobiles that are connected to the geo network at that time. I do not need to worry about that part. Okay, so suppose I want to communicate something. So suppose this is a host and I want to access Google. Okay, so I will say www.google.com. I'm pressing www.google.com. Now what will happen at the time when I say that I am pressing www.google.com? Okay, so what will happen here? So the packet this is the thing that you have written, and this will be particularly travel towards wherever the Google server is there. Okay, suppose this is New York, Japan. Japan is the nearest server that to India, and you will see here in Japan there will be again there will be another network, and in this network there will be different kinds of host. Okay, that will be connected. Now in from this host there will be many hosts that will be connected, and these hosts are providing services. Okay, so there may be hosts that are providing services that are referred to as servers. Okay, so if there is a server will be also be a computer. Okay, so keep in mind the server is also a computer that is only provide services to the user. Okay, so if I'm pressing www.google.com, so my packet will go towards google.com. Okay, so my packet will go towards google.com to get the service. Okay, so it is as simple as that. The communication is very flawless, but you have to understand that there is only not one network that is in Japan. There will be another network that will also be in India. Okay, so there may be hundreds and thousands and millions of network. How do I know that I have to go towards this particular server to get my service? Okay, so there one thing come that is referred to as IP address. Okay, so IP address is nothing but a combination of network ID and a host ID. Okay, host ID means that network ID that particular this I will give you example of IP address 192.168.1.10. Okay, so how this is a octet, how it is divided, how many classes in IP network that you will study in computer networks. I will not go into the detail here because that is not necessary. So you have to understand this particular address contain two things. First thing is network ID and second thing is host ID. Okay, so network ID and host ID. So these two things are unique. Okay, so network ID and host ID combined is a unique, so that your your communication know where to go. Okay, so firstly this IP address will be identified that there is a network ID that we need. It will go towards a specific network. Okay, so suppose network 4, it will go towards network 4, and it will in this particular network the packet will go towards a specific host that is referred to as host ID. Suppose the host is 236. Okay, so within a network there can be any number of hosts that depend upon the IP address. Okay, two things that you have to remember, that only you can communicate with other what you say system or other computer with the help of network ID or host ID, and combined it is referred to as a IP address. Okay, so whenever you press www.google.com, your computer will send a packet onto the router, and router is responsible to send the packet towards wherever the server lies. It can be in Japan, it can be in Korea, it can be also in India also. So now right now there are many Google servers that exist in India. Previously we have the nearest server was in Japan. Okay, so now if you're seeing here that from packet go from this, there have two things that you have to remember. First is network ID and second is host ID, and you will get a service. Now after that it will reply back. It will again, because it came from a source and destination IP address, it will contain a source IP. Source IP will be the IP of this source IP, and destination IP will be the IP of this one. Okay, so where you extend, you want your packet to go. Okay, so this is your IP address actually. Okay, so www.google.com is actually IP address. Okay, so how actually it is IP address, I'll show you, just wait a second. Now understand one thing, I'll just repeat in a very simple terms. Okay, so you have to communicate between two networks. For it you need a IP address. IP address contain two things, and it is first of all it is unique in all the world. It is a unique entity, and it contains two things. First is network ID and second is host ID. Okay, so combinedly they are unique in the whole world. Okay, first thing, Where is the IP address? IP address is whatever you are typing on google.com, like www.google.com. Whatever you are typing in English is your IP address. Okay, so just I'll show you what actually is this and why I'm calling this a IP address. Just wait for a bit. Okay, so understand this point. Now we only need two things. First is network ID. Second is host ID. Okay, so till now it is clear. Any doubt till here? You can tell me. Okay. Now, you only need two things, network ID and host ID. Now, why I'm saying this is a IP address? Why I'm saying www.google is a IP address? Okay, so suppose if I say instead of Google, you have to type 192.168.4.8. Can you remember this? No, you cannot remember numbers, but you can easily remember alphabet. Okay, so actually www dot is a IP address. There is something called a DNS, domain name server. Okay, DNS, that convert this English written or alphabetical words into numbers, that is referred to as your IP address. Okay, so if you want to see, I can also show you in the system. Just wait. Okay, so suppose in, okay, so can I ping? You're seeing here, you're getting a reply from 172, 217, 167, and 228. Okay, so actually this is the IP address. Okay, so this is when you write www.google.com, you're getting a reply from this. So this is the IP address of the destination host. Okay, so where you want to, what do you say, where you want to communicate, where you want your data to be sent. Okay, so how to convert this www.google.com into numbers is the responsibility of DNS. You do not have to remember what actually it is in the form of alphabets. Okay, but it is in the form of digits like 172.217. You do not have to actually remember that. Okay. You can also check it. Now, these are some things. Now you're seeing here, if you can interpret, if you interfere here, your packet is going. Suppose the source IP address, and there is a destination IP address that is written on a packet. Okay, so it is written as A, and the destination IP address is written as B. Suppose it is written as B. Okay, so we already know it will go towards a specific unique IP address that is in that exists in Japan. Okay, but if you have to interpret or interfere in this packet, suppose there are routers that are connected here. The routers are communicating where to go in the network. Okay, suppose this particular R1, I am here connected to this router, and I'm just watching which particular packet is going on. Okay, from this network. Okay, so I'm just watching that, and I see that there is a particular packet that just want to go to google.com. So I can interpret or I can interfere in this particular packet, and I can change the content of the packet. Somehow, if I change the content of the packet to be the whatever is the IP address of this. Okay, suppose I change the content of this packet to C. Okay, so it means whatever this particular user is doing, I am getting it. Okay, so I can give the response back whatever I want. Okay, so this is the first step of knowing that how can you find out the different vulnerabilities, and how can you interpret the network ID and a host ID to change its contents. Okay, so there is something called ARP poisoning. So I will also tell you what is ARP, then I will show you what is ARP poisoning. Okay, so that is only based on the network source IP address and destination IP address. Okay, so that is why you have to know the basic of these particular things. Okay, so in this particular topic, you have to understand what is a network ID and what is a host ID. Only this thing. Okay. So after understanding it, the combination of this is referred to as a IP address. Okay. So after understanding it, we can perform different kind of attack based on the IP address. Okay. So you can scan IP address. You can look at different kind of IP addresses. You can do this. Okay. Now, Uh, there are two common terms that we will be studying in the starting of network security. First is referred to as vulnerability, then there is referred to as a threat. Okay, so these are two different things. Vulnerability and threats are two different things. Vulnerability are the system weakness. Okay, so we are, if you can identify the weakness of a system, you can press on it and you can get out, you can get something meaningful out of it. Okay, threats are just attacks. Threats, I'll show you the difference between these two. Okay, starting with vulnerability, it is a weakness that allows an attacker to reduce the system information assurance. Okay, so this is referred to as a vulnerability, and this is referred, there is many minute difference between it. Okay, so suppose you have designed the security system, and it is not fully designed. Any kind of people can recognize that there is some kind of vulnerability and there is any kind of a weakness in the system, from from which if I particularly exploit that weakness, I can get a access of that system. Okay, so that will be your vulnerability. That means that you do not have designed a proper security system. There is some security flaw that exists in the system waiting to be uncovered. Okay, so suppose any kind of a company, the big companies like Facebook, uh, Microsoft, or any kind of a company that is very big like Cisco, they firstly give their product to the security engineers to test their security flaws. Okay, so vulnerability is that any kind of if you see bug bounty, that bug bounty thing also come under vulnerability. The students or the people find the vulnerability in the system, and they report those vulnerability to different organization, and they reward them for it. Okay, so this is again kind of a vulnerability, but meaning that there may be vulnerability exist in the system that a coder or that the system designer do not know. Because again, uh, if you are designing if you're designing a system, it may be possible that you cannot see what other people can see. Okay, so it is like that. So if they if the people are studying your system or examining your system, they can say that with the help of this weakness, one or two person can gain access of your software. Okay, so that can happen. So that is your vulnerability. Okay, so vulnerability, a weakness in the security system, policy, procedure, design, or implementation, that might be exploited to cause harm or loss. Harm or loss here means that it can gain access of the system. Okay, suppose there is a username and password to go into the particular domain or to go into the particular system, and if I find any kind of a vulnerability, that I can go inside a system. Okay, so there was a very popular vulnerability in 2011 or 12 iPhone, where you can just open a calculator app and type something and you can gain access of the system. Okay, so that was exploited by many people, but then somehow Apple find out and they fixed that particular thing. Okay, so similarly, I'm saying that there may be vulnerability that lies in the system. Many big companies have that they design software have different kinds of vulnerability that lies in the system that is waiting to be exploited. Okay, so not many people know, but still that is why they perform these things like bug bounty and other competition, so that your software will become robust. Okay, so attack surveys some of vulnerabilities in a given system that are accessible to a hacker. Okay, so it is not like one vulnerability. So attack surface will be referred to as that there are series of vulnerability that lies in a system, and an attacker can gain control of the system by getting to know about the vulnerabilities. Okay. Any doubt till here? What is a vulnerability? Anybody not understand? Just let me know. Okay. Just wait a second. Okay. So this is referred to as a vulnerability. Okay, so there is a difference between vulnerability, threat, and attack. Okay, so I'll get to the difference here. Firstly, you have to understand what is a vulnerability. After that, now, what are the examples of vulnerabilities? Okay, so a hardware is that uses obvious algorithm source to generate keys. Okay, so if you already know the source code or algorithm that how a particular keys are generated, you can easily guess the keys. Okay, so if you already know that how algorithm work, you can also know that this algorithm will generate this keys. So you can easily gain access of a system. Similarly, for software, does not check the input data. So sometimes if you have seen, there is something called what do you say, limit boundary testing. So, okay. So this boundary testing is done by many software engineers. The first thing that they have done. Okay, so in boundary testing is that they sometimes the software engineer or any kind of engineer that is designing a software, a security software does not define or does not give validation in the input like username and password. They are not giving any kind of a validation that the password should be seven at least seven letters, one this, and the username will be like this. There are some validation that you have to be given. Sometimes they forget about those validations, so you can easily put your malicious code in this and you can gain access of the system. Okay, so that is why there is different what do you say, different branch setup for this. Okay, so if you give your software to testing, first of this is the very first thing that they will do. They will test the boundary values. Okay, suppose you have given that you can only enter from 0 to 9 in a password. They will check 0 and 9. Okay, so if the boundary is well set, okay, so that is why in software you have to check that there is boundary testing. And then there's this is the example of vulnerability: database and Wi-Fi router left configured with known default password. Okay, so you already know that if you want to in your router, if you want to go into the what you say setup mode, your username and password will be admin and password. Okay, so anybody that is connected to your Wi-Fi can get into the setup page and change anything that is in the Wi-Fi. So they can also change the default password that is used to connect to the Wi-Fi, and any other setting that they can change. Okay, so this is again a kind of a vulnerability that most of the users do not change the default username and password. Again, there is another policy that not restrict enough, let any server of the company to upgrade the server patch. Okay, so this is again a very good case study. Taiwan first bank ATM heist, around $2.2 million. $2.2 million uh, were just taken out of this ATM banks. Okay, so this is a case study. So you just search for it, Taiwan First Bank ATM heist 7 2016. You will get to know how they are able to do it. Okay. Another thing is enforcement procedure, that they are not using any kind of what you say strict guidelines. Okay, so the people that are operating the software are not very trained. Okay, so that comes under enforcement procedure. Like help desk gives out password without verifying the ID of a requester, so that is also a very big vulnerability. Okay, so if you're seeing here the vulnerability, also in vulnerability there is also a human vulnerability. Okay, so there are some human errors that can be there. Okay, so previously if you're seeing here some, if you uh, some of the websites, just you click on forget password and then you click on I do not have a I do not have access to a particular registered email ID. Okay, so previously in Facebook and other applications, suppose you, if you click on forget password, they will give you an option to get a particular OTP uh, on your Gmail account or your registered email account. And then there was also an option called I do not have access to this particular registered email. So then there will be a security question. The security question that are very simple, like which particular state you were born, something like this, or one or two security questions were there, and many people are easily able to get the access of a Facebook ID, right? And then they just have to enter a new password. Okay, so that particular practice was was stopped. Now, if you do not remember the your registered ID, you cannot reset your password. So that was again a kind of a vulnerability that was there. Okay, so most of the time it will be many of the time, not most of the time, many of the time there will be a human error that will also be a part of a vulnerability. So do not think like the vulnerabilities only that will exist in a hardware or a software, but there are also human errors that people giving out their passwords. That is kind of a vulnerability that they are directly giving the password to people. Suppose you're going into the ATM and then just a person saying just I do not know how to get the money out of this ATM. Can you help me? So you just help the people and you know the pin of the ATM, and then you just take the ATM and run away, something like that. Okay, so this is kind of a human error that the people are not trained enough to operate the machines. Okay, so that is why they are giving you the passwords of a particular very useful things like ATMs and other things. Okay, now type of system security threats that can occur. Okay, so this will be we will be starting in the next one. Okay, so till here, if anybody has any doubt, let me know. Any doubt? Any?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, shall we
No,
close
sir.
the lecture?
Sure.
Okay.